Hi, my name is Tom Lewis with the Kids Can Fish Foundation. We're a 501c3 charity based in Brunswick, Georgia. Our mission and goal is to provide free fishing camps for kids around the country, and Triangle Sport gave us a donation that's going to increase our efficiencies. When we looked at our 2024 camps and realizing the amount of kids that we were going to impact, I reached out to Triangle Sport and asked them if a individual person, not a bait shop or just somebody at their house, can own one of these. And I was very surprised that there is a network and there is a reason that the individual owner wants these. I asked them what pricing was, told them what we do, and we received probably one of the kindest donations that our charities received in the last 3 years. The good folks at Triangle Sport sent us an SC125 as a donation to our charity, and it's an instantaneous efficiency that we gained in preparing our camps. When I opened the box from Triangle Sport, we received our SC125 Linewinder. It was really incredible how easy it was to assemble. The main component, which is kind of like the brains and power of the operation right here, the motor, is assembled to the board. You have this piece right here, which your spool actually connects to, and it kind of anchors itself down on, and that's what allows the motor to rotate the spool. We'll get more into that later. And that's just as simple as assembling it right into and sliding it into what I call like the motor wheel or the casing of the motor. This part right here, which I'll show you again later, houses the spool, and in this circumstance they have this tool, just looks like a little cone, and you put this over that housing, which allows it to seat in and hold on to this bigger 5000 series spool. And it's really, really simple to do. The actual piece here will depress in if you need to gain yourself some space, so depress it in. You'll find the groove, it seats in. And then, believe it or not, one of the hardest parts for me first was I was just attaching this piece here that holds the spool in place and finger tightening it. But I found if I would use some back braking with my hand and this rubber ball, which I like to use, take this piece off for these bigger spools. And right here, instead of just tightening down hand tight, I use like a counter pressure with my hand and then lock myself into place. And that's not going anywhere. This component right here allows you to spool up conventional reels or bait casters, which we don't use a whole lot of conventionals at our fishing camps for the kids. So if I wanted to spool bait casters or conventionals, you release these pins here, raise it up, and you can spool those just like you would a spinning reel. This device here is very similar, or if not the same, as this device here, which is what you walk the line back and forth onto the spool. I'll talk about that too, because it takes a kind of a finer touch. It's just something the first 2 or 3 spools I did, you find your pace and your rhythm. Over here, you have the arm that is going to allow you to attach your monofilament backing. This is a larger spool, because obviously we line 30,000 yards of line a year on these camps. So your line, your monofilament just drops on, and this is your line counter. The line counter is actually pretty important because I want to try to put the same amount of backing on every reel as possible, so that when I put the braid on, I'm putting the same amount of braid and filling up the spool equally. Lastly, I'll take my pin here, my locking mech, and just lock this into place with a 1/4 turn finger snug. It doesn't have to be very tight. We have our power line here, and then another line that goes to the foot pedal that's here behind the table, and that's your control to navigate how fast you want the spool to move. I've not ventured past medium speed. Medium speed seems to be kind of home for me. I was learning at a lower speed to start, but today I'll probably spool up more in the medium setting. But it's important for me is that when I'm putting line on to start, I go slow to begin. And then once I've got an even wrap on the spool, then I'll get into that foot pedal and kind of go to the full maximum speed that it's going to allow me to use. Triangle Sport recommends that you actually put your spool on so the line feeds out from underneath. So I'm going to follow their recommendations. So the line for the spinning reel should come from underneath the bulk spool, And here I'm going to tie an arbor knot. If you've ever tied line onto a spool of any kind, Linewinder or not, an arbor knot is what you're going to want to use. So an easy way to do that is just make a simple overhand knot that's going to kind of break the line in place for you. Loop it around, come back over. I've made another loop around my finger and then up and around. So what I have here is I've made this small loop that's going to cinch down. So I'll pull from the bulk part of the spool, cinch it down, and my knot, as I pull tighter, is going to slip down onto that circle and cinch us down into place, like so. Now for monofilament backing, you don't need to put electrical tape. Some people do, but for monofilament backing, the monofilament is going to be what bites and what holds the line for you. I don't think there's any harm in using electrical tape if you want, but the instructional videos and the people I talked to said it's not needed for monofilament. Now if you're going straight braid to the spool, then yes, you'll want to use something for that line to bite onto the spool. So from here I have a little bit of slack from the bulk spool, and I'm going to pull the slack out. I'm going to reset my counter. This is 30-pound monofilament backing, and I'm going to use 50-pound braided line once I get my backing. I'm going to aim for probably 45 to 50 yards of monofilament backing. So I have my device here that allows me to guide the monofilament onto the spool. And another thing that I learned quickly was initially I just held this device even with the spool. I found that I was able to gain some tension by lifting up, and it allowed me to feel better where I'm guiding the line. So the early mistake I made was dropping my hand and just trusting that the machine was going to do everything for me, and that's not the case. So I pull this piece up, keep good tension, and then another part is hand braking the master spool. And believe it or not, without a glove on this monofilament, your hand does not get hot. If I were to keep my thumb or my hand on this hardened plastic of the spool, it gets hot pretty quick. So I keep my hand right here on the monofilament, and I'm going to slowly start adding line onto the spool. This, I think, is a really important part, is to start slow. So I'm starting slow. I'm going to try to get a nice even amount of this backing on. Slowly work myself back and forth. And now I feel comfortable going faster. You'll find your pace, the right amount of tension. I'm going to try to eliminate the centerpiece there, so focus in the center. And now just move back and forth. My line counter's reading 20 yards. 45 to 50 seems probably going to be right at home. Another thing I did when I was learning is I would stop and I would inspect. So I'm actually pretty happy with this. It looks like it's evenly wound. The first spool or two, it wasn't so even, and that's okay. That's part of learning. But I'm really happy with how we are here, and I'm just going to get back into the foot pedal and continue spooling. I'm at 34 yards. You can look, you don't have to look at the spool the whole time. 40 yards. And I'm going to stop at 50. And just like that, 50.3 yards. I will pull my bulk spool off. Now when you do 100 surf rods, I did 100 monofilament backings. I will do 100. For this camp, I did 30 in a row with the backing. That prevents me from putting this on and then putting this on and back and forth. That would be time consuming. So I did backing on 30 real straight and then pulled my backing off. You want the line, center line to the spool as much as possible. And I'm also going to reset my counter because I know I have 50 yards of monofilament, but I want to know how many yards of braided line I have. So this is the part where I'm not sure the industry standard on what the best knot to tie is. I tie a uni to uni. I tie it well. I can tie it pretty quick. I'm familiar with the Albright knot. I understand that an Albright knot is a good knot to use when attaching braided to monofilament, and I'm going to learn that knot. Probably in the future I'll use the Albright. I want to try to keep my uni to uni as small as possible. I don't want a large knot. And if you're not comfortable with a braided line to monofilament or even fluorocarbon, you should learn a good knot to tie these two things together. So I'm just going to tie a simple uni to uni in the wind to the best of my ability, very much like out on the water. Now this is 30-pound monofilament and 50-pound braid. I would be probably comfortable going down to 20-pound monofilament. About half the size of your braided line in the monofilament is where you want to call home. So I've made my wraps. I'm going to wet my line, and I'm going to pull this snug and just kind of leave that home for right now. I'll come back and do my other side, attaching the monofilament to the braided line. And literally this took me out of the box an hour to kind of learn and kind of get the feel of how this works. And I was amazed at how easy I was able to take this out of the box, watch a couple videos, trial and error for a few spools myself, and now I feel very confident doing this in wind and on the roadside is a luxury for the Kids Can't Fish Foundation. Wet my line again, cinch it down, and pull it tight. Now I have my braided line and my monofilament connected, and I'm going to cut as close as I can to the end. I'm back to where we started initially. I'm going to reset my counter. I'm going to guess that this is going to hold, I'm hoping for 150 yards of this braided line. If 150 yards isn't enough, then I'm not going to put as much backing on the next one, and I'll find where the sweet spot is. So if I don't get at least 150 yards of braided line, I'll probably put 30 yards of monofilament or even less. So I'm going to start slow and feed the braid onto the line winder nice and slow. That color is pretty cool, that green on the blue. And what that'll allow you to know is if you get a big fish that's spooling you and you see the green monofilament, you know that you're towards the end of your spool. You'll know that you have 50 yards of line left. So I'm going to slowly get this on here. I feel good, and I'm going to continue on. 15 yards. This braid is going on really smooth. Like there's hardly any resistance. Nothing's grabbing. Finding your timing, I would say slower instead of faster. I think the first spool I did, I moved my hand very fast, which was wrong. 50 yards. I might fill up the middle a little bit here. $65 yards. And again, this is on medium speed. My speed control set to medium. That's plenty. It sure beats hand winding and lining up surf rods in the garage by hand. And again, prior to 30 days ago, I've never done this before. And in the history of owning this line winder, this is probably the 33rd, maybe the 34th spool I've done. I have 120 yards. I'm just gonna look at my spool. I'm getting close to the end. We're gonna be close to 150, 130. $140, we're gonna make 150. Or how about this? I'm gonna go to 165. 165, and we're done. Now, another thing that you'll want to do is use the tool that's attached to the motor and cut your line. And then you're gonna want to find the clip on your spool and secure it down. Again, this is probably the 35th spool that I've done. Right out of the box, it was really easy to assemble. I tried 2 or 3 spools. They were okay. They certainly will work. They weren't fed nearly as tight and as clean as this. And with a little bit of practice and watching the videos on the Triangle Sport website on their YouTube, you'll be off to the races and you'll be spooling line like a champ with very little effort and work. So again, Triangle Sport, this donation is one of the kindest things anyone's ever given to us, because it's going to allow us to spend more time with the kids on the water. It allows me to spend more time with my family when I'm at home, because when we do this camp preparation, people don't see the behind the scenes setup and the work from all our volunteers that make it happen. So this piece of equipment means a lot to me as a person that organizes these charity events, and you're doing a great thing for children and making a difference, and we thank you for that.